Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Dana Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special returning guest, Lou Paduano. Lou, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. I felt so good. I told my wife, I was like, I'm gonna get Lou back on. It's taken a while, and I know we're recording well before the due date and stuff like that, the published date. But it just feels good to be like ahead of time and still be on schedule for being ahead of time. So I really appreciate you coming back on, and glad we didn't scare you away the first time. But
Oh no, it
yeah,
was a blast. It was a
yeah,
blast.
yeah. Actually just had somebody comment on it the other day, so I thought, oh, that's like serendipitous on the YouTube, one of the videos or whatever. I think it was the main interview, so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the first time and coming back and chat with us some more. We all really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love talking about books. I want to hear about your writing. I want to hear everything. Come on, let's bring it.
Well, let's do this thing. First, we'll start with you though. Can you tell us about your writing experience and your journey for those that have not watched our first episode, which was season 5, episode 44?
You got it. Yeah. So I've always been a writer. I've always wanted to do that. I went to SUNY Oswego for playwriting, so I was very much into the script, the dialogue of everything. So when I actually write a book, I actually handwrite all the dialogue before I draft. Um, So from there, screenwriting wasn't exactly kicking off for me. So I started dabbling in prose. I had a lot of short stories that just are still in a drawer somewhere. But when my first daughter was born, we decided that I would stay home and raise the kiddos. And during nap and bedtime, I started cranking out pages, and that's where Greystone came from. That's where DSA came from, and I haven't stopped since.
I was just teasing my wife about that the other day. I said, Lou got to stay home and write. She was like, I'm a counselor, buddy. I was like, yeah, like a school counselor. I was like, yeah, all right. Then I looked to my son, and he's really into art. And he's like 3.5, but he's like crushing it. I was like, you're my hope one day, buddy. Like, get me out of
There
here.
you go. There you go.
Not that I don't enjoy everybody, but I just want to stay home and write all day. I talked to my buddy about that the other day. It's just like he's like, "What's your dream?" I was like, "To write all day." He goes, "You don't want to be a bestseller?" I'm like, "Just want to do what I love to do all day, which is write and read." I
That's what
was
I tell people all the time. I post on Patreon all the time. I said if one person reads that story, I've done it. I've done the job.
yeah,
You know?
I totally get that. Well, that's what my mom like. I was having like a rough time with a student, and I was just like, I just want them to just listen 1 minute to be successful. And she was like, remember, like when you set out on this path, she was like, your goal was if you could help one kid per year, and like really help them. You said that was success. I said, well, now my problem is I did that so much and then kept going. I was like, I want them all to be successful. So I was like,
Right.
my friend goes, that's how I feel about my books. I was like, I totally understand that as well. But yeah, just doing what you love to do, right, doesn't feel like work then, right? So I think, if anybody can do that, they're not only going to be, good at what they do, but they'll enjoy it a lot more. So I think that's always good advice.
Yeah, no, I sometimes I forget,
It's
and I'm in
hard,
the
right?
I'm in the weeds and I'm just like, oh, I got a social media post. I gotta edit this. You're just doing these tasks and you're like, wait a minute, wait a minute. You're doing what you love, right? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Let's do that.
I like that though, because I'm a server. I used to serve tables all the time. So in the weeds is exactly how I feel right now with two short stories, like, critiques being due and stuff. I got a
Exactly.
post for our group for our Kickstarter for tomorrow is our next like follow Friday. So I totally feel that. My wife's like, "You sure you're going out to eat dinner with your friend?" I was like, "It's his birthday." I was like, no matter being in the weeds is gonna, blah. And I know we're gonna talk about books tonight, the three of us, when we go out. So I was like, I think sometimes I just need,
Yeah.
that even when you're in
Definitely.
the weeds, Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I totally understand the screenwriting. Like that's how I first got into writing, and yeah, it's definitely a different beast. But yeah, I found that yeah, there was something about prose that I don't know. Yeah, I liked it a lot more. I don't think I'm ever as good at dialogue as am prose, and I've been working a lot on dialogue, which is weird because my friends like you're a good talker. I'm like, yeah, but you have to like write it. I don't know. It's like weird, right? But yeah, that definitely like once I discovered prose, I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Oh,
I
see,
think
I
that's
forget.
also
I'm the other way. I'm like, oh man, I work so hard on that prose. The dialogue's so easy. It's just, It flows so well, and then you're like, oh, where are you stationing everybody? How do you format? Like, where are they moving? Like, what's the object in the scene? What image are you creating? And it can be a lot.
Not to call out one of my critiquers because I thought it was hilarious and they were totally right. But like I'm going and I've been taking critiques from all three, which has been great. And it's going to be the best thing I've written so far because I've had three people look at it before our editor. And they're all great authors, like in their own right. So, particularly urban fantasy. So, I like going and I like, you're editing, right? And you're looking at the comments and I'm going and one of them goes, "Oh, that this was really good," and it was like the pros, like I really like how you said this. Then the next line is literally like the dialogue. They're like, "This is crap. Like you really need to improve this." And it was like it like threw me out. I was like, "Wait a minute," and I looked. I was like, "Oh, they were totally right." So
Yeah,
I'm like
yeah.
still trying some days, but yeah, it's awesome.
No, I'm reading a draft right now. I'm like probably the fifth or so edit, and
Hmm.
I'm still finding, hey, you used that word in that sentence like four times. Maybe switch it up a little bit.
Ben Shankman goes, "Do you not use contractions?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then I'm looking through and I'm like, I don't use contractions. Like I do if I'm writing like a paper, but not if I'm writing a story. I was like, what happened to me? Like,
It's
and I
so
think he goes,
formal.
yeah, well, I
Everybody's so
think it was,
formal. They're dressed to the nines.
I think it was the previous story I was writing was like epic fantasy, right? So I was like, was doing that, and I just like, yeah, I went right in. So I'm like, well, that was dumb. And I was like, now I got to go back through it for
All
contractions,
right.
at least like a few, right? 30% or something like that. Oh, yeah, I was dying. Like I was looking at the three of them, I was laughing so hard at the feedback, and like none of it was wrong. I was like, they're like, "Are you sure you agree with me?" I was like, for like 80% of it, at least. I was like, yeah, if not 90. But yeah, I'm like, that's why I need an editor. That's why editors are good, folks.
Oh
Or,
yeah, no, you
your
need that
critique,
extra
things like
pair of
that.
eyes.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. All right, now in terms of, people haven't, you talked a little bit about urban fantasy, but just so we could be clear for, our audience, so when they go to the description here to find, your books and socials and things like that, what genre and genres do you currently write in and why?
Okay. So yeah, Greystone is an urban fantasy series. So I write that, and the DSA is a sci-fi crime and mystery series. So those are the two genres that I'm playing with right now. Uh, Now, I went back and I looked at my last answer, and I feel like I could do a little better this time around. The reason I write in those genres is because you can do anything in those genres. That's the most fun to play with, is that there's no set rule. Like you can have a romance tragedy, you can have a very real world story, but with, goblins and gremlins, just popping out of nowhere. So there's a lot of play with that, and the sci-fi angle's the same way. Like I always start with character. So it doesn't matter if there's aliens or space battles or whatever. It's as long as there is a main player that you can connect with, and there's something to hold on to. That's what I love. That's where I come from.
I mean, I think that's totally fair. Like I interviewed you and then another friend right after, and I was like, oh, it was like itching at me, and I always love Agent Coulson from, like Agents of Shield and stuff, and I was like, oh, something was just irking me, and with my urban fantasy, and I had this other set of like Men in Black like characters from I Call the Company, and I like combined them, and I was like, ooh, urban fantasy with a twist of sci-fi sounds amazing, and I always loved like Eureka and like Warehouse
Yeah.
13, and I was like, oh, and all of a sudden the characters in the story, because I have these two amazing characters, but then once I allowed the magic and urban fantasy to, relate to the sci-fi, all of a sudden the playing field, I was like, ooh, in my entire universe, I had two that like fit together perfectly. So now I'm just like so excited, but it was so funny because it was like we were talking about that. And then, yeah, I had talked to another author that talked about that, and I was like, ooh, and then it just like clicked into place. So I
That's
have
awesome.
been yeah, I've been like really working, really reworking just a little, and I was like, I don't really have to do that much. So I totally agree. It's fun to take like what's there, right? And then I just had a student ask me earlier, goes, "You're all about urban fantasy lately." I said, "Well, I really enjoy reading it, so I'm enjoying writing it." But I said, I was like, it's fun to do that, right? And then to take all the history knowledge and the mythology and stuff, which I know we're going to talk about here, in a minute, but like you've done, for your newest book in particular.
Yeah.
But it's just so much fun. So when,
It is.
when I want to do something fun, I write urban fantasy. So I totally agree. That's awesome. My
Cool.
friend asked me, yeah, I'm so glad. So he went back and watched that interview, and he goes, "I'm so glad that you asked Lou that question." And he was like, "Yeah, because sometimes he's like, I just don't know, right? When I'm looking at Amazon." And I was like, "Yeah, it's fair because sometimes the tags aren't exactly right, or sometimes I feel like they hide them now." So, yeah, he was like, "Oh."
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He loves sci-fi, but he's like me. He wants like a mix of something, whether it's like alien and horror or something. He usually isn't a straight sci-fi person, but yeah. So when we were talking about your books and stuff, he was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." So I think it's why it's also important, I think, to do interviews and to get your works and stuff out there so people know. So I think that's always really smart for anybody, whether they're indie or traditional. So I thought that was really cool. So I'm sure
That's
what some of your sales had to come from him at some point, is what he
why,
was saying.
yeah. Why, thank you then, sir.
Now, I'm really excited to, because we just started to discuss, your plans for this book during our last interview. And, you said you were kind of wrapping things up. And then once we got done, you and I talked about doing this interview. So I'm really excited. And when I saw the cover, I was like, oh, this is so my thing. I got even more excited. So what is your newest release, Army in the Obelisk, about, and how did you come up with this idea?
So, Army and the Obelisk is a lost tale for Greystone. So, it's a standalone novel that's set in the past. It focuses strictly on Soraya and Loren because I love them so much. But where it came from was I was looking to do a project that was pure Greystone and also a new entry point for readers.
Hmm.
Because I had finished the first half of the series back in 2018. I had done the prequels in 2019 and 2020, and I knew that the back half was coming. So I wanted something to kind of ease the runway there, to get people back in, and then they could pick up from there. So Army came about at the same time that I was starting the Patreon. So I developed it as a 12-part serial instead of a strict novel. So each part of the book is 8 chapters long, and they all feed into the next to tell an overall narrative. So that was the impetus behind the book, and it was very focused on. I always love Egyptian mythology. It's one of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
this is one of those pantheons that you just love to dig into and those histories. So I wanted to play in that sandbox for a bit. So
That's super cool. Well, that's definitely my thing. I was supposed to go to Egypt actually with my great aunt and my mom and my other aunt, her sister, and literally like we were supposed to go, yeah, like I think it was like a holiday break. It must have been like Thanksgiving or something. And then literally 9/11 happened like shortly before that. And
ugh,
then everything was wild, right? And I said
yeah,
I
yeah.
asked you the other day say something. I was like, that was the least of our worries, right? Was that I missed my trip and stuff. But yeah, my friend here actually just went last summer actually, or sorry, last winter actually for our break. And he actually brought me this really cool Sphinx statue that he
Ooh.
found. Yeah, it was like, I love it. It's awesome. He's like, yeah, we'll have to go some point. I was like, oh, I'd love to go. So yeah, when I saw that, my aunt used to buy me all sorts. My great aunt used to buy me all sorts of Egyptology books and stuff like that. So I was for sure I was going to be Indiana Jones when I grew up, and then I realized that I was going into archaeology, and then I talked to some archaeologists, and I was like, "Yeah, but there's not really that many snakes, though, right?" And I laughed, and they all looked at me. They're like, "No, dude." I was like, "I have a phobia." I was like, "Ooh, maybe I should switch careers." So I chose history teacher instead. But I
There you
love Egyptian mythology. I love the history. Like you said, there's just so many fun things. I love what Kevin Hearn did with like Basque and stuff like that. So yeah, I when I saw that, I was like, oh, I read the blurb. I was like, this is totally my thing. I said it to a friend. I was like, you want to know what kind of urban fantasy book is my thing? Here you go. And he's like, yeah, that totally sounds like you. But in terms of like that story though, like, and I like how you're talking about like the lost tales too. So I think that was a really smart person because I think that gives you a lot of freedom, right? To be like, oh, here's another lost tale. So I don't know, just marketing wise, like people always ask me, these little things like, what's a good idea? I think that's a perfect idea because it just allows you, right, to pick at any point, and I think that's just a really, really good idea. And like you said, right, to give people a different entry point. So I just want to point that out because sometimes people ask me that question. So I think that that's a really good idea. So,
Oh yeah,
but
I
yeah,
thought if there is a point that somebody can just dip their toe in the water, see how the series is without committing to a 10 book, 5,000 page epic, you know.
yeah,
They just have these they just have Army, you know. You can read Army on its own and it's a full satisfying tale. And if you enjoyed the characters and you want to see where they go from there, yeah, you've got more. So,
that's a
I
great
was
idea.
always looking for some a way to bring people in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I totally agree because I'm like looking at my prequels and I'm like, and I kept having people, they're like, how'd your Monster Hunter become a Monster Hunter? And I think that's what kept getting into my mind. And then I was like, well, I'm like one of those people I like have to read a book in terms of, like the timeline, and I have to match it, right? So if you're like all over, I'm like, well, I kind of wanted to see what's, timeline. So if you have a prequel novella, I like to read that first and then go. So for me, I think that's where I got stuck writing my actual book one. So I was like, oh, I want to go. Well, then the more my friend and I talked about it, I was like, I should just make it like a 3 year gap, where he becomes like you get the first trilogy for prequels and then it goes from there. So I'm just gonna label them 1 through 3 and just say, yep, this is a set, and then you just go from there because I was like, I could do a point 5 or something like that. So at any point, I could just do them, right? And then just, just show you on the timeline where it sits. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I think I always think about that and try to think about, again, like you said, like try to get readers in at different points. So I just think that that's, if people are watching or listening, I think that's a really good, move on your part. So I think that makes
Well,
total sense.
it was totally necessary on my part because I did not start at the beginning of the story. I started in the middle-ish of the story, and I had to backtrack a little with Tales,
Yeah.
book two, and then book six is another prequel. And then you read the prequel trilogy. You read Hammer and Anvil and all that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of back and forths, but
Yep.
they all fit well. I think.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
curious.
Well, I just saw something the other day, and it was like, I can't remember who I was just talking to about this because I like just finished one of their books, like, and they're a trap published author, but like, I was like, oh, I thought my friend and I thought that the book was over here, but it was actually like before another series, but it was really good. But we were like going through several weeks ago, and yeah, I was like, oh yeah, and like I think people that write really well and can do that, and dip themselves in. I just find like I have like I just can't do that myself. So that's why I was like, oh, do I write book one and then go back to the prequel? I just found like I was like stopping myself, and it was like so weird because I never would have thought that I would have that issue. But I have noticed that like for me at least, like doing that has helped to change a few things, to solidify the world and stuff like that. And then my 10K story, No Rest for the Wicked, and our Kickstarter coming up for Arcane Awakenings, like it has helped me. So yeah, I've been discussing that with a lot of my writing friends. I'm like, learned a lot about myself as an author this year, like things to do, things to not. And like when I get stuck, I've noticed like when I'm having trouble and I don't want to write, it's because I'm actually stuck or something isn't working. And then I have to just like I want to write, but it's like I have to write something else. And then I have to wait for the other thing because it's like my subconscious is trying to help me. So before I would try to plow through, and then I thought I was having writer's block, but it's not. It's like I just have to percolate a little bit more than
Oh yeah, yeah.
maybe I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with, or maybe I have time wise. But it's the benefits of being an indie author, right?
So
Like,
yeah, sometimes you just steam ahead too fast, and
yeah,
you're just like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wait a minute, let's just
And that's
backtrack a
why,
little.
yeah, that's why Dan is on draft 5, guys, of his prequel novella.
Yeah, right.
Not that long of a story, but yeah, probably should have listened to myself more. Now, I just have to ask though, Egyptian mythology history, it is really fun, but were there any other, pantheons or eras or, parts of the world that you thought, to put these characters in, other than Egyptian mythology, or was that just like the one you're like, hey, this is the one I'm going to do?
For this book, I wanted because usually a Greystone novel will bring in a lot of different mythologies.
Yeah,
So for this one, I wanted to strictly stick with Egyptian.
got
I wanted to stick with one pantheon, and it because of that, it does have a couple ties to the larger arc
it.
of the series. There are because Osiris showed up in Pathways in the Dark, Greystone Book 4. So I thought, well, I have to include him. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense if I don't include him because he exists in this world. We've already
Yeah.
established that. So
Cool.
it was fun to do that.
But that's cool though, because you do get like a new entry. Just to point out, you do get a new entry for fans, but then you also get the nod for fans who have read it, right? Like the other books, right? And
And
they're like, "Oh, hey, that makes sense." So,
and that's what I thought. But at the
yeah.
same time, anytime I pitch the book and I pitch it as a standalone, I always remember like, oh wait, it has that connection. I hope people aren't upset that they have to wait until book four to realize what I was getting at between those character interactions.
I don't I don't know. Like I sometimes like forget because I'm like in the story, right? And then they'll be like kind of down there, and then because that happened with another series I was reading. If you guys can tell, I've been reading way too much. uh, but yeah, like they ended up the urban fantasy author did the same thing though, but it was like I had forgotten, right? And I feel like Jim Butcher does that, right? Where he'll give you stuff in book five, but then he'll use it later on in like book 14, right? Or characters like he'll reuse characters at times and give them like a deeper plot, or like a bigger part in like a story or something like that. And I don't know. I feel like for me, like I feel like really rewarded at those spots because
Yeah.
does that make sense? Because it's like
Oh
I
yeah.
read it and then later on it's like almost like an investment, right? And then I'm like, oh yeah, like Lou did this and that, and then I don't know. I love surprises. So when people do that with characters or plots or something, I don't know. It's almost like it makes it better for me if that makes sense because I had to wait a little bit and for that to develop. But when I see those connections, like that's what I really like about urban fantasy authors. I feel like a lot of urban fantasy authors and fantasy authors in general do that. And yeah, I don't know. I always feel really rewarded, even if it's not like an immediate payoff. But particularly when you're like talking like Lost Tales or something like that, or a prequel, right? I don't know. I guess I automatically assume I might have to wait a little bit, into the main story to see a character or to see something like part of a plot fulfilled or something like that. But
Yeah, or if you came at this later and you're like, "Oh, I see how that related to that earlier plot point," or you
yeah,
go
yeah,
back and you read it again, which is even
yeah,
better. Like, "Hey, revisit
yeah,
my series. That'd be great."
yeah, yeah. That's what I've done with Kevin Hearns and Patricia Briggs, like Mercy Thompson and Alpha and Omega. My buddy and I, like, we'll just go back and forth, like, and we're about to do. He just did a reread, and it's been a minute for me. So I think I'm gonna go back and do the same thing with Iron Druid Chronicles, but like I'll do that with Audible or something like that. And I do recommend that to people because I have gotten so much out of doing that with different authors, and it doesn't matter the genre, right? I'll do it the first time as a reader, and then the second time I'm reading as a writer, as I like to call it. Then the third time I'm really looking at it as an author, and then trying to get something out of it. But I feel like I get something out of it every time. Like I used to reread Shadows of the Empire like all the time, and then Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Oh, that's like one of the best Star Wars books ever. It's not even that long. It's really like a novella, but it was like what Lucas was gonna do before he decided on Empire Strikes Back, and really, it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, it was really cool. But it also showed, like I think like the development of an author, or just like of a world and things like that. So yeah, I think things like that are super super cool. Hey, Hyde. Now, in terms of that fourth question, so I love asking people this. Maybe it's the historian in me, but how did you go about your research for Egyptian mythology and history, and how did you like really like work to incorporate them into this book?
Okay. Well, I knew Greystone typically uses a monster element, so I wanted to use the gods and goddesses as those threats. So you've got your Bastet, you've got your Nebeku, you've got Serket shows up.
Mm,
So there were a lot of that to play with in terms of motivations or appearances. That's where I break away and I do what serves the story best. In terms of the actual figures in the story, uh, the key to figuring that out for me, like I spent weeks researching and just going through historical websites trying to figure out what area or what era of Egyptian mythology I wanted to pull from, or Egyptian figures I wanted to pull from. And the key for me was figuring out who the big bad was. And once I had nailed that down, I knew all the figures around him.
mm,
And they're all historical figures. They all played a role in history, but how I was able to use them to serve this story is what made it the most fun to
sounds cool.
build. So as each chapter was written, as each part was conceived, you figured out, oh, okay, I need a Grand Vizier here. So who do I need? So I go back and I figure out, okay, this person was connected to the Pharaoh that I've chosen as the big bad. Uh, who's his general? He plays a huge part in the book. So Jehudi is his name, and so I read up all about him and how he's connected to the Pharaoh and what purpose he played in the story that's being told here. From there, I realized that part 10 I needed a temple built. So who's an architect from that period? So I would research that. I'd come up with a name, and Minmos showed up.
Hmm.
So I used him, and then I knew. So I'll take their historical figure, and then I'll play with them. I'll play with different attributes, different physicalities. In case, like in the case of Minmos, he's a threat to Sarai in the end. But instead of him just being like this regular guy, he's like this 7 foot behemoth who, since he's an architect, hey, let's give him a hammer. Let's give him a giant hammer that he can
Oh, that's cool.
throw around. So it's just fun stuff like that to play with in order to figure out what works in terms of the action scenes, but what also works in terms of motivation for why this story is important to tell. Is you don't want just a bad guy that's just there for table dressing. You want motivation. You want to know that there's a threat there,
Yeah.
and that maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. you know?
Okay, Thanos. That's like a really good way to do it. I am laughing at myself right now because like I like really liked a lot of the like my friend Michael Vadney just had his debut Noble Bright Fantasy like Crownfall come out, and him and I discussed a lot about like like he did like a lot of like like late 17th, early 18th century sort of work for research, and then
Wow.
incorporate those things. Yeah. So I just could not get that out of my brain, and I was stuck on my 10K, and like I had just written the rough draft, but I had to fix a couple of key things. So I was letting it sit, and I was like, oh, I really like kind of like that feel of what him and I were talking about. So I was like, I want to do something alternative history. So I was looking at Roman history, and I was like, well, if you could pick one moment in Roman history, what would be cool to change? And I thought it might be kind of cool to change Constantine and the Edict of Milan, and then going like kind of like fantasy or urban fantasy, and then have it be where like a witch saves him, and then he has that vision of God or whatever, and like puts the has a vision of God saying like put my image on your shield and I will help you with the battle. And then the next day he literally signs the Edict of Milan, legalizing Christianity, right? So I was like, what if the Roman Empire never fell? Because at that point, like he also kind of like freed or made legal all supernatural beings. So riches were never hunted. Werewolves, like the Nordic ones, right, like come out and like become like protectors and stuff like that. And I just kind of went from there, but like it was very difficult to figure out the research. So, was there any point in time where you're like, this is a cool idea and I want this to work, but I also want, like the research to match it? Like, did you have just like a couple of issues with that at all, or did you find things because you were going with people, like with who you went with kind of matched the story more because they were all connected? Or was there anything that you found like you had to kind of change because maybe it didn't fit the time period or maybe like the era in Egyptian mythology or history that you picked?
There were, I mean, there's a big ceremony at the end that resurrects this pharaoh.
Hmm.
Um, there was no like wizardy kind of guy to use for that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I did more research. I mean, there were historical figures, but they were not connected with that particular era in Egyptian
Yep.
history. So there was some play with that. So you'd have to go back and you'd be like, so my Grand Vizier Reckmeyer, he he grew in the telling. Like instead of
Hmm.
just being this, sycophant, he actually had motivation. He grew with each edit. There was more of his story mixed in with everything else, so that it made more sense. Like, oh, there's a reason why Jehudi's been gone this long and why he's back now. Reckmeyer brought him back. Well, why did he bring him back now? Like, it's
Yeah.
there was figuring out those kind of pieces. Like, well, why is this happening now? Like, because it could happen anytime, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it there had to be a reason for it,
Yeah.
and that was where most of my story logic issues come from, is that just trying to justify, okay,
Mhm.
why is this happening now?
Yeah.
Why does this matter now? And why, like, is it enough of a threat at this moment, or does it need to percolate more, like try to build more
Yeah.
before we can handle it,
Mhm. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I've just found that recently. Like I was trying to with my Spellbinder series, like story. I was like, oh, I wanted like a particular person from a particular region and time, and then I was like looking at the same thing. I was like looking for this like mage like person in history that I could kind of go off of, and I couldn't find anything. And then I was looking for a ring, and I couldn't really find anything. And then I found a particular ring from a story that was very small that was there, and then I was able to build off it. I don't want to give it away,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I'll tell you later. But you, our audience, you have to go to the Kickstarter. But it's called Rings of Adventure, by the way. But it's interesting, right? Because I was like, I have to do something, and I had that same thing with my like historical fantasy, where it was like I wanted something, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna take. I wanted something that had necromantic powers. And I was like, well, give me something from, and it was like nothing. And then I found Odysseus's sword, from like book like 12 or 13 or whatever it was in the Odyssey, where he like cuts the veil to the underworld.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
ooh, there's another item that's mentioned that could actually I could build off of, right? But there was nothing like Excalibur. I had trouble this spring finding equivalents like that, if that makes sense. So I just always find it interesting how people kind of solve that problem or kind of jump those hurdles. So yeah, because sometimes I think that stops people, right? Because they can't find the thing they want to fit, or they found something they can't make it fit. So yeah, I always find it interesting how people kind of overcome those. But I do like what you said though about like you kind of went with like a pharaoh and then kind of went that way. So I
Oh,
gotta say, Lou, I'm gonna steal that idea now because I've
he,
never thought of that.
he
And
was
that's
the
so
keystone, right? Yeah, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
he was the connecting stone to every other piece of the
Oh,
puzzle there.
what is it like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever
Yeah,
or
right. Pretty
something?
much.
Yeah.
Pharaoh bacon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I should totally do that. But I'm gonna do that now though, because that's why I was like, I was having trouble finding some people. Yeah, for a couple stories, I'm like, I should have just done that. Because if I'm going Constantine, I could just go like you did and go that route and then make some changes or add some people. So I think that's super, super smart, especially when you're rewriting the entire like second half of Roman history, like
Right. Yeah.
and the world and stuff. So I think that's really cool. Was there anything like any like one part of Egyptian mythology or history that you were just like, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm putting this in the book, if it's not a spoiler.
I'm trying to remember the research angle. I don't think there was any. I think I knew the story pretty well
Hmm.
in terms of what I wanted, and I know it dovetails into our next question in terms of the mystery aspect of it. But I knew the pieces of the puzzle, and I knew the trail to get to that climax.
Hmm.
So I don't think there was anything out there that. But I there in terms of the threats, like learning about Serket and learning and
Mhm.
coming up with the visual for this scorpion goddess thing,
Oh,
there was a lot of play with that. Some of the threats, like there's a one off in part seven with this Japanese dream demon called the Baku,
oh, I remember you said that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and just coming and finding a way to bring that into it, just because it served as a character piece for Jehudi, it served as a character piece for Soraya, and just having that kind of play to go around the mystery that's still unfolding through the center line of the whole novel. But
Cool.
yeah, I can't think of any one fact or something cool like that.
I always just like my friend was like, sometimes there's too much history teacher in you, and because there's like something that'll pop up, and I was like, oh, and then I'm like, have all these dots, right, that I want, and I can't connect them all. He was like, you gotta just pick three and just go with the three. So, yeah, I find that all the time. Like somebody will tell me something cool. I'm on way too many TikToks for history, and I'm like, man, that sounds cool. How do I do that? Yeah, so sometimes, guys, less is more. I guess is my lesson that I've learned. But speaking of yeah, the mysteries, because I don't know. I love like mystery like plots and elements in fantasy, urban fantasy in particular, and sci-fi. Like it's like one of my favorite things, I would say, honestly. I had a friend that wrote like a female version of like Indiana Jones. And it was like the lost library in Egypt, right? Not Alexandria, but the other one that's like underneath, right? Like the sands and stuff. And it was just so freaking cool. And he did a really good job of adding the elements of fantasy and things and like some horror and stuff into those kind of tropes. But it was such a good mystery. So how did you though like do your story and how'd you put it together? So like what were some of the tips maybe that you can give to other authors who want to incorporate a mystery or mystery elements into their own urban fantasy tales?
So what's good about Greystone is that because you have a character like Detective Loren, you've already got that kind of in with that genre. So when I was developing the series, it was very much a murder mystery slash urban fantasy, low fantasy, whatever you want to call it these days.
Yeah.
But there was always that mystery element. So in terms of an army, how I developed the mystery was, well, what pieces of the puzzle do we need to bring back this pharaoh? And that's basically what you get. Is that so? In part one, the obelisk is stolen. That's the beginning. That's the inciting incident. In terms of part two, there's a piece of history that's stolen. That's that's up for grabs. There's canopic jars that are stolen that are tied to this figure. So there's all these little clues throughout as to what they're building toward, but they don't. Since Loren doesn't, he's not a history guy. He's a Superman guy. He wants to know about the Fortress of Solitude. He doesn't want to know about anything else. So Soraya has to inform him on, hey, don't open that jar. It's full of intestines. Like that's gross. Like don't do that. But but she's the one that has to kind of bring things together. And there's another character that's introduced in this book called Patricia Fleming, who's an archaeologist, who's also serves as a love interest for Loren, which is something that I never got to play around with in the main series. So it was fun. It was fun to actually add some romance and prove my wife wrong that I do have a heart. It does exist. But yeah, it was so she became another person that was able to feed exposition in and bring that kind of Egyptian history to the forefront, so to inform Loren, hey, this might be what's going on here. This all these things seem to tie to this one figure in history, and maybe they're bringing him back to life. You know, like.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was where those mystery elements came from. But in terms of wanting to do it for your urban fantasy, I think I think every book in some manner there's some kind of secret, there's some kind of mystery underlying something. I mean, there's always something hidden. You don't want to reveal everything up front. But in terms of Greystone, like it's baked into the core that there's a mystery here, that there's going to be a big reveal in your third act, and things are going to go to hell pretty quickly.
Well, I just asked that because like my friend Ben Shankman, who's one of my core team members for Arcane Awakenings for our Kickstarter, like he had my brother's keeper, and it's like he's like the back blurb, like he sets off like he's got a PI, who's kind of like down on his luck, and then his brother's like is dead, and you're literally at the funeral on the blurb by the end, and you're literally there at the start, and then you go through the story, and he's like trying to figure out, was it natural causes, was it not, and like it was just I always find it interesting because my student just asked me this. I was like, I always find urban fantasy interesting because whether you're talking about Patricia Briggs, like with Mercy Thompson, or Anna and Charles for Alpha and Omega, it's like, and like Kevin Hearn's Iron Druid, like everybody's kind of doing the same thing, but there's so much variation. Like
Oh
not
yeah,
everybody's a PI, but you're getting these elements of mystery, or finding out who done it, or who's the secret god or whatever, and pretending to be mortal, like whatever it is. It's just always so much freaking fun because
right.
everybody does it in such a unique way. Where even if you took your series, right, and you took five others, you guys are all, and like sure you're all different authors and stuff, but everybody does it in such a unique way where it's not the same type of detective story. They're not the same, detectives. And there's always something unique and interesting. And that's what I love about urban fantasy personally, not just the mythology and stuff, but it's how urban fantasy authors like yourself are telling the story. And I actually play on that a little with my first novella with the blurb. And I even say right at this like the top, right? Like Nathaniel is no PI. And I had somebody like was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. I said, no, I love Jim Butcher. I love the PI and whatever it is. Or some now you have some people doing police detectives, right? Who are urban fantasy, who have something. I was like, no, I love them. I just want you to know, like, he does things differently. Like, he does not think of things like a PI. He's a hunter. Like, he thinks of things like a hunter. So he misses things at times that, other PIs who are in it, like your character might be in it, right? And be like,
Yeah.
hey, this is how we do things. And they're very different, right? But I love going into those differences because every time I read a different urban fantasy, it's like, and then people do the same thing with the world, right? Like when you're talking about Egyptian mythology, right? Like, you're going to do something far different than myself or Kevin Hearn or somebody else, and we could probably even have the same god or character, right? And I think that just it's the uniqueness, I think, of the stories, tales, and characters, and their threads in between that I think really make urban fantasy like really really fun,
Oh,
regardless
absolutely.
of the tropes and stuff. But that's
Yeah,
super
no, the bad guy in my book is facing Soraya and Loren, so their experience is
cool.
completely different from the that same bad guy being in another
Yeah,
series and tackling their protagonist. It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
it's again, I hammer it home all the time, but if I would not write these books without these characters. The
Mm,
Greystone would not be anything without Soraya and Loren.
yeah.
That's it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. I was actually talking about to my friend about that because I was like, "What did you like about this story?" And it was funny because I really liked a particular thing from Supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I really wanted to do this thing. And he was like, "Oh, it felt like this," and it was so funny because he was like, "It felt like Supernatural, but season 6," and I was like, "Ooh." I was shooting for season 5, but I was
Yeah,
like,
come
I don't
on,
really
no season 6. Oh no.
I was like, I think that's what it was, but he was like one off, and I was like, oh, it was so close. But then he said something about Buffy, and I was like, oh, I was like, thank you, because I was like, that was like trying to nail those two things, and I didn't even say that to him. So when he, gave me critiques for the story, I was like, oh, that's so cool. But I think we all have those feelings, right, of the urban fantasy that we love, right? Whether it's a TV show, a book, or movie, something like that. And then we want to incorporate those. So I definitely agree with you. I think it really comes from where the inspiration comes from, I think, right? And then our own unique experiences. But
Well, I
yeah,
can't wait
super.
to read this musical episode that you wrote for your short story, right?
I really should do that. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he said season 6. I was like, we're so close. Yeah. All right. Now, when it comes to chronological order, how did you decide to place this novel between Gremlins and A View from Above in the Tales from Portals collection?
Okay. Um, so first, what I realized when I was creating the story was that we never had a straightforward Soraya Loren adventure.
Mm,
Like every book, their arcs always served the epic. They always
mm,
served the series. Like, oh, they needed to start here, they needed to end here for the next thing. So I never had that moment where they just went on an adventure together. So that was where I started. In terms of the timeline, Tales Tales leaves a gap.
mm,
So Gremlins takes place about 6 months after Loren and Soraya meet, but then you don't see them again together for 2 years. That's when A View from Above occurs. So between those pages was the perfect time to kind of drop some adventures, to kind of show that growth of their relationship because they're kind of combative in Gremlins. They're
mm.
kind of combative in Alpha and Omega because that's when they first meet. So I wanted there was that slot right there, that sweet spot where there's a couple of years that we could play with. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
actually where Last King takes place too.
Mm,
And I mean, Loren's got so many ups and downs with his problems trying to figure out who murdered his wife and everything that you could see that progression. You could see the change in him as a character. When I was coming up with some of the subplots for Army, you'll notice in parts 3, 6, and 9, it actually shows you the progression of his relationship with another detective character, Standish. So if you've read the main series, you know that they have a falling out and they come to blows against each other. And Loren actually he loses his job for a while because of it. And that takes place in Tales as well. It's a story's called Resurrectionist, and that takes place right before the first novel of the series, Signs. So I wanted to show from Gremlins, where he first meets Standish, and they already don't like each other, to Army, where they're forced as partners, to the end of Army, where you realize, oh, this is why Loren has to tolerate him now, to them still being partners in A View from Above, and how that happened over time. So it was fun to kind of weave that thread in there and tie it to a specific point in history for these characters, but show a certain progression in terms of their characters.
Cool.
Yeah.
Those connect the dots, right?
Right? So I mean, you've got that play so you have Soraya beating up, Egyptian gods and everything, and you've got Loren on the other side having to deal with this dick of a partner who's just everything he hates in the world. And the reason that he comes to tolerate him is kind of cool. Like part 9 does not, it's kind of on its own in the midst of this standalone, but it has those implications like, oh, this is why they're together in A View from Above. This is why he's still part of this story and why he feeds into the larger narrative. So it was fun to, again, those touchstones. The same with Osiris in parts 3 and 4, to have those kinds of connections to say, hey, if you want to know more about what's going on with these two, there's 10,000 books here to play with.
It's actually 15,000, guys. Get pre-order. That's super cool. That's what I was trying to explain to my friend. He was like, yeah, you could just do what you just said. And I was like, I can't do that. I was like, I hope I can get to your level one day, Lou. But yeah, I was like, I'm just so like, I was like, my mind lately especially has been like so linear. And it's so weird because I feel like I used to be able to write like out of order. Like that's what I did for my epic fantasy. Maybe that's why I didn't like it by the end. So I definitely have to like revamp and redo it and stuff. But yeah, like I was just like, how do I do this? So I applaud you because, like I said, I read another author who was able to really just do an amazing threads. And I'm sure if you looked at their chronological order, you'd be like, holy crap. But like it totally worked. And I'm like, it's kind of like Iron Druid Chronicles where like the druids have different headspaces. And I don't know, maybe it's because I had my son, or my wife had my son, and he's been a lot to to do lately. Maybe that's wiped my extra headspace out. But yeah, I give you credit for being able to connect the dots there and thread a really cool story. Yeah, that's what my friend said. He goes, "It happens, Dan." I'm like, "Yeah,
it does."
One of these days. I said, "Do I get it back?" And he was like, "Ooh."
I hate to tell you this, but
my son just turned 13. Oh, he goes, he went to move my car to help me out and bumped my wife or whatever. I was like, oh, so you're telling me I will always be this way now. So I'm just trying to figure out like how to write now, I guess is the way to put it. But yeah, yeah, I just think that's a really useful skill to have though, because if you have such a cool idea like this book, because I had somebody say recently like they wanted to do something similar, right? And I was like, it sounded so cool, just like Army and the Obelisk. And I was like, this is such a good idea, but they were like lacking confidence, right? That they'd be able to thread. And I'm like, dude, you got to do this. Like, it's a great idea. And it was, again, a really cool entry point, And he was like, you just love prequels and in between books. I was like, yeah, if you like a series and characters, like you want the reader's going to want as much from the author as possible. Right. So I think this is a great idea on your part in general, but like knowing that now and why you placed it where you did, I think it's an even better idea, because it really does give you more bang for your buck because you're doing multiple things for the story, which I think also, gives your audience multiple, ways to be satisfied from the story, and from the overall series and world. So I don't know. I think that's a really, really good idea. So I think if you can thread, like you said, I think, I definitely think people should go for it personally because I've seen so many people like yourself, be able to do it and do it really well. And I also think you don't know what muscles you have, particularly for writing, until you actually try to do something, right?
Oh
I
yeah,
did some
yeah.
things this year I never thought I'd be able to. I never thought I'd be able to do a 5K story, and I'm at 5,199 words, but I'm gonna get there. But yeah, and I never thought I'd be able to do a Kickstarter, and then we're doing pretty well so far, in
That's
terms of
awesome.
putting it together. So yeah, so I think if you want to thread something like this, and you think it's going to be cool for your audience, I definitely want to encourage people to do the same thing. Especially if you have a series and characters that you love. I think your readership is gonna want the same. Like if like anything Kevin Hearn writes about Atticus, like his druid, like and Oberon, like I'm gonna buy it, I'm gonna read it. He just had one come out recently, a collection of short stories about some younger characters that they work with, and I'm like so excited to read that this
That's
on
awesome.
vacation next week. Yeah, so I'm stoked. So I think that this was a really great idea on your part, and I cannot wait to read it. So now I got to ask you though, was there one character or piece of the story that you felt more accomplished with? You were just like, I nailed that. This was so much fun. And you were just like super excited about. And why was that the one?
I think the character of Jehudi that is introduced here is the one. He's got quite the arc throughout, and he's very fleshed out. His history is so cool to play with, and what he has to go through to kind of toe the line with his bosses, but also see what the modern world is like and kind of get that picture. There's a part, yeah, part 10 of the story is called Two Soldiers, and it's him and Loren having this like De Niro Pacino coffee conversation. Heat. You gotta
One of
love
my
Heat,
favorites.
right? That's where I drew inspiration from. I said,
That's
"Oh,
awesome.
I gotta have this one."
That's awesome.
But that's one of those conversations where it's like, you have a chance here to stop a war that's coming. Can you do it? Can you show me that this world is changing and is worth it? And Loren fails. And I loved being able to play with that and show like Jehudi's reaching out. He's trying to find a way to avoid what's coming. And he can't. He can't look at the world the way it is and be like, this is better than it was. 'Cause it ain't. So I loved being able to tell his story and have it grow. Like, I don't remember the initial outline being anything like that
Hmm.
at all.
Yeah.
So his story just grew and grew, and it really takes over. Like, for as much as Soraya and Loren are absolutely a treat to write in every book that I do, I it was a lot of fun to play with his character.
That's cool. Well, I don't think anybody. I mean, William Dafoe's a great actor, right? Like, don't get me wrong, but I don't think anybody thought in the original Spider-Man that we were gonna get that William Dafoe.
You're
like,
right.
like, holy crap! Or Heath Ledger's Joker. There's always. I think there's just some people that are just like, it's at that moment, right? And
Yeah,
I
they
think that
elevate.
happens with stories. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that happens with authors with stories too, with certain characters. Like, I had one for my epic fantasy, and it's like this character, she's like, yeah, I'm actually not in this book. And I was like, to hell you aren't, like, you're right here. And she's like, no, I'm not. And then I had another character, she's like, actually, this is my story. And then she changed the entire book. And I was like asking my buddy, I said, what do you think about this? He goes, oh, this new idea is so much better. And I was like, so that's where I got kind of stuck. So I was like, needed some time to percolate and stuff. And then I was like re-characterizing people, redoing things. But I was like, man, he was right, and so was that character. So I can't wait to wrap that one up next year and get that out to people because like it was like this crazy idea, and that's how I think that's the best characters though, right? Are the ones that are like flesh themselves out, or you
Yeah, they
get
take
more
over.
excited about. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
think those are always the best characters to read because for an author's point of view, they're the more fun to write and you get a better story out of it. So that actually makes me super, super excited more to read that character in the book. So glad I
Oh,
asked you that question. So
it's so
I
much
thought
fun.
about taking it out too, but I'm glad I left it now. So that's super cool. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very interested in their character now. So All right, Lou. Well, I know we're winding down on time here, but I want to make sure, we have room for our last question because it's always important for our audience to go and check out our authors and creatives, like you. And you are our first episode of season 6. So,
It's gonna
so
be great.
excited.
Great
Yes.
season.
Yeah,
Best
yeah.
yet.
My 60th year anniversary for the podcast is coming up in August. So, super, super excited. Actually, it's like the day after my birthday or the day before my birthday, actually, August 27th. So, this will be super exciting. Now, do you have any news updates or other current projects that you can share with us?
Yeah, yeah, no. Greystone is reaching its end as of this. Secret of the Stone, Book 9, is on the shelves. It's awesome. It's the penultimate chapter of the series. So
Cool.
everything kind of hits the fan for everybody. And then Heart of Forever is the edit that I'm currently closing up.
Cool.
It's a celebration. It's going to be the end of the series, and then I'm diving back into DSA. I'm doing season
Cool.
3, so I've got those 6 scripts sitting on my desk, waiting for me to flesh out. It's a nice countdown series, so we're gonna finally gonna reveal the big bad of the series.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's gonna be so much fun. The books every season gets bigger than the last. I find it funny that the focus becomes more narrow in terms of, hey, we finally see what this threat is. We finally see where we're headed, but the scope just gets bigger and bigger.
Mm.
Like it's massive what's going to happen in this series.
That's awesome. I'll have to tell my buddy that I was at the Comic Con with because, yeah, we split the books.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and he started the first one. So so I'll have to tell him tonight when I see him. He'll be excited there. We actually talked about your books. Actually, we're trying to get back to book club. Him and me and a friend of mine. So we're hoping to kind of put some stuff on the table today to see what we can do this summer. So him and me are both urban fantasy all the way. So he's like, we already have loose books. We might as well just like start them up and stuff and get to the other series, like the opposite series, because I had one and he had the other. So yeah, we're talking about that tonight. So he'll be,
That'd be
I think
awesome.
they'll
Yeah,
both
no.
be excited about Army of the Obelisk though. So definitely seems like all of the three of our things. So really excited about that. But Lou, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so happy, I could get you back, and we can talk about this book and, really, see what else you have going on. I absolutely cannot wait to give you my story in the,
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I'm so
uh,
looking forward to it.
yeah, I can't wait. And then, I'm wrapping up. My novella. I got you on my list, so I'll send you a copy, signed copy of that once I can wrap it up. I'm just trying to see when the best date to release is. But yeah,
Now,
I can't wait. That'll be
now.
super fun. I
The
know,
answer is
right?
now. Just do it now. Let's get it out there. Let's go.
I'm like, I told my wife, I was like, I don't, it's so funny, right? Because like once school is done and stuff like that, and now my brain's starting to percolate again, and all of a sudden, like the writing brain's turning back on. So I was like, oh, maybe I could just, I think maybe on vacation I could just wrap up. I told her, I was like, that's my goal. She, what do you want to do? I was like, I just want to wrap up my novella and then just send it to the editor for one more, one more run, and a couple of my friends for betas, and then yeah, just get that sucker out there. I'm really hoping like, middle of August would be really nice, like right before coming back to school, because then we'll be here and I can do a few things like this and stuff on some other podcasts and stuff. But yeah, well, I will let everybody know starting next week where I'm at with that. But yeah, I can't wait
Awesome.
to send it to you. Well, my friend, I hope you have a great rest of the day. And I'll give you this release date. But if there's anything we can do to help you, in the meantime, if you want me to put anything in the podcast group or anything like that, links, Army and the Obelisk or anything like that,
Sounds great.
or the
Yeah.
last book, yeah, just let me know and I'll help you out as best I can per usual. So,
Awesome. Yeah. I'm here for you too, my friend. Yeah.
oh
Thank you
yeah,
so much for having me.
yeah, anytime, anytime. I am gonna try and contact you this summer. We're trying to do me and Ben are trying to get a couple urban fantasy authors just to do like a 1 hour Q&A on like one topic or something like that, just to try and have some urban fantasy fun. We're trying to try and drum up some interest for our urban fantasy anthology. So definitely be on the lookout there. Probably be like us and a couple, people from our anthology and maybe like one other person from like another podcast or something like that to kind of lead us. So if you're interested, I can, get you
Yeah,
involved.
definitely.
Super cool. So awesome. Well, I will put you on my list, my friend, for contact. I'll send you a follow-up email for this interview. But again, if there's anything I can do, in the meantime to help you out, just let me know. I'll definitely be calling on you this summer and in some way, shape, or form from my novella. But yeah, other than that, I'm here to help and, can't wait to read the rest of the book. So.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, everybody in our audience, make sure you check out Lou's books and social links in the description. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. Just don't forget, once you read those books, please make sure you review them. That helps out Lou, helps out everybody. Doesn't matter if they're indie or traditional, or if they're an author or another creative, helps everybody in the creative process. So thank you guys so much for checking us out. Lou, hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm sure we'll talk very, very soon, my friend. I really appreciate you coming on again.
Good. You too. Thank you so much.
No problem.